Mary Campbell's wandering around my business right now too. Oh, there she's in the window. You guys got to check this out. Get out of the way. Look at this. This is what I have to deal with. Hey? Well, there's a little entertainment for everybody. Okay. Where was I? I have absolutely no idea. With the opening, the reopening of businesses on phase 1 here, had a few phone calls come in. Had a few phone calls come in as to some confusion that was happening with where High River sat in this thing and compared to Calgary and Brooks. So things are changing very, very rapidly, and we are constantly, trying to keep up to speed with what the provincial government is doing, and we basically find out when you guys find out. So the biggest piece with this is that if it's a critical issue, then I have direct contact with Dr. Hinshaw. So if it's a critical piece, then I can phone her directly. But for the most part, I don't want to overstep my boundaries with that, of course, but we find out when you do, and we make decisions for the town based on what the provincial government is doing, as well as what's actually going on in High River, which we have to be very careful of because of the outbreak that we had. We're not like every other town in Alberta. We have different issues that we have to be continually respecting. So we're always watching the numbers, and of course, in our High River zone, since my last video, which was 2 weeks ago, we've gone down from 158 active cases to 16, which is massive success. Recoveries have gone up from 377 to 515. So everything's moving in the right direction. What we're doing is working, and we need to continue on this. A little update on our High River Hospital. Things are starting to come back online there, and normal operations are resuming. So the surgeries are back running, and maternity, they'll be back fully operational by June 3rd. The ER is busy with normal situations like fish hooks in a kid's leg. I don't know where I got that from. Long-term care facilities, seasons, no change. Medicine Tree Manor, no change. Things are successful there. On our second floor at the High River Hospital, we're down to 1 active case, and that's a huge success with getting those numbers back down. So, speaking directly to the economy and to businesses and the reopening, lots of questions and lots of opinions around that, but we still have to, yes, certain things, and you can agree or disagree with which businesses are open and which are not. These are all provincial guidelines and decisions, but we didn't do all of what we did before just for fun, and now it's all gone. We learned our lessons, and we know how to control this. We know what we need to do to manage this as best we can, so we have to continue to be responsible and doing things so that we don't have a second wave come in and then we have to revert back like I was mentioning before. So we've been shut down for almost 2 months now, it seems, and it's time to get things going. There's ways to do this responsible, and but your own self-responsibility is at the top of the list, is to making sure that we continue this and get it going. We are big on people to make their own decisions and allowing people to be responsible for what their course of action is. But at the same time, we do have to make sure that safety and the pandemic is at the top of the list. So there are decisions that we still have to make as your town council to make the best decisions we possibly can for this community. So one piece that we're talking about, the council's talking about it. I spoke to Dr. Weiss about it this morning, and one piece that's proven to be the critical aspect of this is that if you have to be in a certain area and you cannot social distance, masks are your best defense to it. And you can post all the articles you want on the anti-mask stuff. I don't really care. It's proven that having a barrier between that is the number one area of transmission if that barrier isn't there, and if you are in close contact with people. I am still wearing a mask and will for a long time in the grocery stores and places like that I have to get to, but I cannot have the social distancing in place. So again, it's not mandatory. It's your choice. You make the decisions for yourself and what you feel best for you and others around you. So another piece that is important to note that any cold could be coronavirus. So those are the automatic symptoms of it. So we're still asking that if you have symptoms, that you get tested. And the reason why we want you to get tested is so that we can do contact tracing, and so that we can find, and if there is a cluster somewhere, that we can get that knocked down and get that isolated as fast as possible. That is the critical piece to keeping this thing in check. So please, if you do have symptoms, please go get tested and allow us to do the tracing so that we can have a better handle on this thing. Council discussions. So a lot of our discussions most of them take place around, the relaunch and the opening of areas. And so we are having a lot of discussions on, especially our outdoor areas right now, as to what the dates are, as to when we feel comfortable with opening them, whether it be playgrounds, tennis courts, pickleball courts, all these kinds of things. So those are in discussion right now, and there are different opinions on them, but we continue to not be complacent on it, and we don't want to keep things locked down any longer than we absolutely have to. So we do have a committee of the whole meeting on May 25th, so Monday at 10:30 a.m. That will be streamed live on the town's YouTube page. There's also a special meeting of council at 1 o'clock on the same day. So if you are, if you finished that model airplane and you got nothing to do, there might be some good entertainment for you, I guess, but that's a double up. Other town actions, what's happening? Southwest Burn. Dirt started to move yesterday. More equipment showed up yesterday, so things are looking good out there. That is just fantastic to see that project proceeding. Go through some of the other notes that I've got. Happy Trails, continue, please. Same program. Make sure, get out, go for a walk, stay healthy. But again, social distancing is critical. Rowan House is open during the pandemic, and they have a 24-hour crisis line that remains operational. So please, if you know of anybody or yourself that needs assistance, Rowan House is open. I mentioned the upcoming meetings. River monitoring, I will just touch on this briefly because it is raining outside and it is spring, so probably get some bleachers set up over by the bench for everybody to sit on and stare at the river for a while. But it's a sport in High River at this time of year to watch that river, but it's also a sport that's sensitive to everybody, and we all understand that. And but the protection measures that we have in place in High River are night and day different than what we had in place in 2013. So we are the most well-protected community from flood risk in all of Canada. There is absolutely no question. And when we get the berm finished on the south end there, it'll be even better. But right now, there are no concerns with flooding. It's normal. River flows are still low. Yes, they're up from yesterday, but they're still low. So there's no concerns there. If there are concerns, we will be out and about with getting that information to you. So what else is in here? Center Street continuing to happen. High Country Drive, we're having a few difficulties in there. I'll be honest with the contractor and the contractor's ability to get staff available. There's still lots of people that don't want to come to work, so they don't feel safe in doing so. So some of these contractors are having trouble getting labor to come in. So we're working through that. But High Country Drive is a bit of a gong show between 7th Street and the Tim Hortons area there. So, but we're on it and we're trying to get it moved forward. So please be patient through those areas. So all of the other services with the town are all operational: water, wastewater, police, fire, garbage, recycling, everything's copacetic. So I'll leave it at that. One final piece before we go to questions. Happy anniversary to Councillor Carol and her husband Dave McMillan. I don't know how many years it is. I didn't get that note, just that it was your anniversary. So happy anniversary. What do you got for questions? Anything?
Just a comment I'll share with you. We have a listener from the UK. She says that she appreciates your no-nonsense approach. She regularly tunes in, so she's thankful for your talk.
Somebody from the UK appreciates my no-nonsense approach and my tone. Tell my wife that. The tone isn't always consistent, I'll say that. So, sorry, babe. Thank you for the kudos, though, over in the UK. No other questions? I'll give it a minute. If you got a question, you can post it. So I'll sip on my coffee.
Someone wondering if you can travel to BC.
Interprovincial travel is not being advised. And that's a provincial rule. And I agree with it. I think until we get numbers in place, I don't know that it's responsible to be going to other communities right now. I think you got to be very careful with that. But again, it's I believe in making your own decisions and being responsible of it. But and I tell you what, when people find out you're from High River, there's a stigma that's attached to this right now. It's not like we haven't been in the news over this whole pandemic. So, you got to be careful. You got to be careful. And it doesn't matter going into a business, interprovincial travel, moving around. Like you have to be careful. And I'll leave it with your own responsibility. Are we prepared for a second wave of the coronavirus? Absolutely. I think what we've learned and through the first wave, and there was a lot of complete unknowns in that, but I think our success is knowing that contact tracing and making sure we get people isolated that are positive, and we keep them isolated for the 14 days until they're cleared is critical. So we do know that 80 to 90% of these cases can be monitored virtually. So, there's a small percentage that actually need, medical assistance to deal with this. So are we ready for a second wave? If it came, absolutely we are, but there's also, we don't want to see that. So it's also continuing on with what we know and not getting complacent and too relaxed with things that will keep that second wave at bay. So that's the big piece with that. But are we ready? Yeah, you bet. Are events back on for the summer? No. You're not going to see, my thought, you're not going to see large gatherings up and running for quite some time, if not at all this year. That is where the dangerous areas are. Going into a business that has 2 or 3 people into it, and there's precautions and, those kinds of things in play there, that's one thing. Going out and having these mass gatherings, that is where we can get into trouble. That is where it's very hard to have social distancing and having certain things in play. When the province opened up with 50 people, it does not mean party on, Garth. It means you can have 50 people, but there's supposed to be 2 meters between each person somehow. That's 50 people is going to be difficult to do that with. So as far as, looking at Canada Day celebrations and all this kind of stuff, no, it's they're canceled for the year for the town for sure. Yep, we have discussed the George Lane Park campground. That was discussed a couple of weeks ago. And I think our plan is June 15th. I get mixed up with different opening dates, but I think our plan is June 15th for the campground to be open at 50% capacity. So every second stall will be, it's not going to be wide open, but every second stall. And then as we watch the numbers and watch the conditions in High River, we might open it up more. But we did want to get that one kind of up, and I think it's a low risk area, and those are the things you got to assess. Is it low risk or is it high risk? We kind of know where the positions are in there. So George Lane Park, 50% open June 15th. Yeah, playground. So playgrounds are a bit of a contentious one right now, and there's different opinions on there. So I'm not going to get into that one because it's still under discussion with council, and we will be discussing it again in a meeting that we have next week. But it is a lower risk area. But again, I go back to the fact that High River is not like other communities. We have to be very, very careful. 16 cases, if you click on that map to other small community areas, 16 cases is still quite high. Most of them are in low single digits when you look at those places. So we are still there, and we're not going to look at what's going on in Edson, Alberta and say, well, they did it, so we're going to do it. But these are discussions that are happening with council, and those are our facilities, those are our responsibility, and we will make the best decision we possibly can for this community.
Are we prepared for a high water event during COVID?
Are we prepared for a high water event during COVID? Absolutely we are. All the precautions that we normally do in High River in May is kind of our emergency preparedness month, and through June is our flood awareness month. Everything's in place. The berms have all been checked. They're all maintained. Like I said, the conditions are much different now. Even the bags on 12th, they've all been repaired and replaced, and so that is all in place. The pumps along 12th Avenue, they're all ready to go, operational if needed, and they can help out on the storm sewer areas. Are we prepared? Yes, absolutely we are. All good? Rock and roll. Time out.